The following is a production of the Dallas Genealogical Society. For more information, please visit our website at dallasgenealogy.org.
Good morning. Good morning. Kim Richardson enjoys serving the genealogy community by coaching and enabling others to do their own research successfully. She assists other genealogists accomplish their goals and helps clients solve genealogy mysteries. She teaches at nationally known genealogy institutes and speaks to groups across the country. Kim created the Brick Wall Buster cards to show others her secret to solving tough genealogy problems. She regularly writes for various genealogy society magazines and wrote the Mississippi Research Guide for Family Tree magazine and researches for Finding Your Roots and Who Do You Think You Are? Welcome, Kim.
Thank you so much. Thank y'all. I'm happy to be here today. I'm excited to get to talk to y'all about genealogy and particularly brick wall problems because I just love working on really tough genealogy problems for some reason. So today we want to talk about, do you in fact have a brick wall? Can we verify, determine for sure that you do have a brick wall? How to make progress on that brick wall, and then just some general tips and tricks that I have learned along the way about working through those tough genealogy problems. When I say brick wall, what do I mean by that? What are we talking about? Well, a brick wall can be an ancestor or it can be a question. Maybe you have an ancestor and you can't figure out who their parents are or who their birth family is. That would be your brick wall ancestor. You can't research past them to make your family tree bigger. Or maybe it's just a question that you have about a particular ancestor. Maybe you want to know when someone got married or when they died or where they were buried or who their children are. And so that question is troublesome for you and it becomes like a brick wall as well. So when I say brick wall, I can mean a person or a question, either one. And I'm sure y'all are in the exact same boat with your research as well. But we want to make sure, do we really have a brick wall to start with? And I love doing this part because there are 9 things you can look at to say, yes, I definitely have a brick wall, or you know what, I thought I did, but maybe I don't. And I have people come up to me after I do this part of the presentation all the time and they say, you gave me more ideas and you gave me more places to look, and maybe I don't have a brick wall after all. So 9 things on the road to a brick wall to make sure that you do have a brick wall. Have you checked all the online sources that are available out there? If you have not done that type of research, if you have not checked all the available online sources, you may in fact not have a brick wall. Do you have a burned courthouse? Now, I say burned because most of the time when we have destruction of records in a courthouse, it is because of a fire. Right? Most of the time. But it could be that there was a tornado or a flood or some other water damage, or it was man-made destruction. A clerk decided we don't need these records anymore, but I sure need that shelf space. And so they chunk a whole bunch of stuff out, right? Whatever causes a record loss in that courthouse, we tend to call burned. And that's a huge problem for us. And I believe in Texas, if I did the math right, y'all are missing about 20% of courthouse records, but due to burn, at least. Yeah, that was the minimum number I kind of came up with. It looks like about 20% of y'all's courthouses, or 22.4 is what I actually saw, are burned courthouses. That's a lot. That can cause a lot of a problem. But if your courthouse is not burned, there's a good chance that you can find information about your ancestor there. So if you don't know whether you have a burned courthouse or not, check that out to see. Have you used online checklists and guides? You can download these from online. Just very general stuff. Go out there on the internet and do a search for genealogy research checklist, and you will get a variety of checklists that people have very kindly put together and put out there for us to use. go through those and make sure that you've checked all those sources and all those resources to see if they will work for your particular problem. If you have not done that, it may be that in fact you don't have a brick wall. Your answer could be there and you just don't know it yet. Have you asked experts? Well, what kind of experts? Right? How do you have availability of experts? You all have a wonderful genealogy library right here, and they have information from all over this country. Not only that, they have over the years done a really great job of scouring for information from everywhere, and they have made sure that they've collected that and preserved it. Very knowledgeable people that work there. Those are experts. Go to them and say, I have a problem in this location at this time frame. What records do you have that could help me solve this problem? So you have those experts. You have experts in your state archives, in local libraries, in local genealogy societies. Ask an expert for help with your genealogy research problem. Have you searched offline? We have gotten to be so online oriented in genealogy, and I love a computer and I stay on it all day, every day. But at the same time, there are a lot of records out there that are not online. We don't have them all scanned in yet, and they will be anywhere from the courthouse to the library to an archive to a local genealogy society. Go out there and see if there are any records that are not online that can help you solve your brick wall. And until you've done that, I hesitate to call my problem a true brick wall if I haven't looked for those places yet. Offline records can solve a lot of brick wall problems, a lot. Vertical files, we were just talking about vertical files upstairs in the library a minute ago, and they get overlooked a lot. I have solved a lot of brick walls just by using the vertical files in a local library, a city library, and I'm from Mississippi, so all our libraries are small, right? So just a small hometown library that has preserved records for us over the time in vertical files. Those are definitely not online. Have you substituted sources for whatever it is that you really need? One glaring example of this that comes to mind that we can all relate to is the 1890 census. Right? The one census that the government said, there's no need to make 3 or 4 copies of this. We're going to eliminate that redundancy. We just need one. You just need to write it down one time, send it to us. We'll keep it safe. And it burned, right? But we have to go in and try to substitute sources when we need that particular record. So what can we use? How can we substitute for that 1890 census? One thing that I use is tax records. I like tax records as a substitute census, and I like voter registration records as a substitute census as well. Any kind of land record, anything that will, quote unquote, enumerate your ancestor in a time and place can be used as a substitute for whatever it is that you need. I've used land records as a substitute for marriage records. Wait, what? How does that even work? Because when you start to see a husband and a wife listed in a deed and you see that date on there, you know they were married by at least that time, right? So we can substitute records. It just depends on what your question is and what's available to you at the time. Cluster and collateral research, we'll talk about this a little bit towards the end as well. But if you have not done cluster and collateral relative research, you in fact may not have a brick wall problem at all. I solve a lot of tough genealogy problems using that method. And all that means is whoever your target is, and you haven't made the progress you want to on that target, we're going to go look at the people around them, some other relatives and some people who they were friends with or went to church with, who they were in clusters or groups with, to substitute for the target ancestor and then see if we can make some progress on them that way. If you have not written up your research, you may not have a brick wall. Writing your research, I will say over and over again, is probably the best brick wall busting method out there. And I mean writing it up in narrative form. When you write your research up in narrative form, that's when you really start to see what you do know and what you don't know and what you can prove and what you can't prove. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on as well. If you have done all of these things and you have come to the very, very end of all of the written records that you can possibly find on planet Earth, you may in fact have hit a brick wall. But if you have not done all of these things, you may not have a brick wall after all. And in genealogy, it's really important to differentiate that because it affects how well we are able to work on that problem. When you tell your brain this is a brick wall, it is an impossibility, there's really no need to think about it, your brain goes, oh, okay, no worries. We won't fool with that. We won't think about it. So if you start to change the way you think about it and say, you know what, I may not have a brick wall after all, it's just a tough genealogy problem, you will continue to think about it and come up with some pretty creative problem-solving methods to work through that problem. So how do we do that? How do we move from thinking of it as a brick wall and seeing it as an impossibility to seeing it as a yellow brick road that we can follow to find the real answer? How do we do that? How do we go from impossible to possible? Well, there are some things you can do, and we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about that. The first thing I'll tell you is to make a written plan. Now, there's a couple of things in genealogy that I don't like to do. I don't like to do research logs. I don't. Now, I do them because I know how important they are. I just don't love it. And I don't like to make written plans. I do them because I know they're important, but I don't like to do them. And here's why. I want to go do the stuff. I don't want to take the time to write down about doing the stuff. Yeah. But I've learned over time that it's really important to do this. And if you will take the time to make a written plan, it actually saves you a lot of time and heartache in the long run. And you do better, higher quality, more focused research when you have a written plan. And so when I first encounter a problem and I do a search for it, about 3 or 4 searches into that, when you start to think, uh-oh, this is not good. This is fixing to be a problem. At that point, I just stop and I go ahead and I update my research log as I go, but I also go ahead and make a written plan because I have realized this is going to be more difficult to prove out. So I'll go ahead and do my written plan. And how I do that is I write down my research question at the top. I do a really easy research plan. I don't do a super complicated, really beautiful written out research plan. I do really simple. And I don't care if you do it in crayon and a brown paper sack or a Burger King napkin. The point is to do it and to have it written down. It doesn't have to be pretty. But I write my research question at the top, and then I just make a very simple to-do list. And here's what goes on it. I will write the top 5 sources for where I think that answer is. What places are most likely to give me my research answer most efficiently? That's what goes on my list. There may be 50 places we can look. I want my top 5. And so here's what I do. I do consult a list of local records that will be available for that time and place. You need to know what's available there so that you know what to pick out to pursue, right? So I want to look and see this list of all the local records that are available that will help me with this problem. I don't at this point want to limit myself to only free records. I love free records. I'm an incredibly frugal person. I have a whole presentation about doing cheap genealogy. That's how much I love it, okay? But when I am doing this plan, I need to be aware that maybe there's this awesome source out there that it might cost me a little bit of money to get to, but it also might be the best place to look. I at least need to be aware that it exists on the front end before I start making this plan. And then I will sit down after consulting those 2 things, and I will make a list of the 5 most likely to answer my research question places, the 5 most likely sources. And that's all that goes on there right now. Now, after I make that list of 5, I want to rank them from most likely to answer my research question to least likely. That number 1 is what I want to tackle first. And if it is a paid source, that's the point where I sit down and I go, do I have the money? If I don't have the money, is this worth saving up for? How long do I have to save to get it? Right? And I tell people all the time, go ahead and start putting $3 a month in an envelope. You know, really, because at the end of the year, then you can at least maybe order one record from somewhere, right? So you know you're going to have one that you want to pay for. If you've got $30 set aside already, you can say, hey, you know what, I've already got the $30 saved up. I'm going to send off for it. So that's something that you can do a little bit along the way so that when you get to that brick wall problem, you don't feel like you're restricted from ordering that record. As you start to do the searches and as you start to work on those research plans, you're going to come across other things you want to add to it, or you're going to burn through those 5 places to look and then you have to add more things. Just as you work through this research plan, update it and add things to it. And this is what is going to help you move forward down that yellow brick road and not get stuck behind a brick wall. You don't want to feel stuck. You don't want to feel overwhelmed. If you have 5 things, if you make yourself a deal, I'm going to go look for these 5 things, that's not overwhelming at all. That doesn't feel bad. But if I've made a big, huge list of 50 things, sometimes I just sit there and sigh. That's going to take forever. And it doesn't motivate me. So I want to manage that list a little bit like that to that degree. So some things that you might put on that list or that you might consider, and we're going to spend the rest of the time kind of walking through those things and some techniques. DNA might be on your list. I will caution you about DNA to say don't do DNA just for funsies. Don't do DNA just because you want to find out your ethnicity, because DNA does not lie and it will reveal family secrets. And we all love to think, oh, there's no secrets in my family, but that is not true. It does not matter who you are. It does not matter what kind of family you come from. It does not matter any of that stuff. There are secrets in that family, and it may not necessarily be about you. It may be about a cousin. It may be about somebody else. It may, and then once you have that knowledge, it is a burden. What do you do with it? And how do you manage this? It becomes an ethical issue to some degree as well. And so don't test just for fun. Make sure that you really need to do the test to answer your tough genealogy problem. Make sure that you can handle whatever those revelations are, that you have thought about those. And I'll tell people, hey, once you've decided to do DNA, just put that off for about 6 months. And use that time to become very well educated about DNA and think about all the what ifs and come back to it in 6 months and then do that if that's what you want to do. Also, I told you I'm really, really frugal. Somebody's going to have a DNA sale sometime in that 6 months, and you could save a lot of money doing it that way as well. Okay, so DNA can break down some brick walls and it can do it pretty efficiently. But again, you want to make sure that that is something that you can handle mentally and emotionally. I get a lot of people who come to me and they say, I did this, I thought it would give me more information about my family, and it did, but it gave me information I wasn't ready for. So just be cautious about that. Take a break from your research, put it away for a little while. And this sounds really a little backwards to some degree. I have to do one thing at a time. We were talking about this earlier. I can wash dishes or I can talk to you, but I can't do both at the same time, right? I have to do one thing at a time. And once I get zoned in on that genealogy problem, I need to stay focused on it and not pay attention to anything else. But at the same time, I have learned that if I will stop and walk away from it and put it down and just not even think about it for several weeks or months, when I come back to it, I can pick it back up, and inevitably I see something I missed before. It gives me a much greater objectivity about my problem, and a lot of times I'll have brand new ideas about how to tackle this situation that I did not have before. Print your records and your notes to study. We are a community of computer users now in genealogy. Look, and I'm all for it because at 1 o'clock in the morning in my pajamas, I can peruse records in Europe, right? It's wonderful. It's great. But your computer screens are small. And even if you have super wide monitors, there's only so much information that you can fit on there. And your short-term memory in your brain is a problem. Because think about this, if I ask you to go to the grocery store and get 3 things, we can probably do that, right? Maybe. If the whole time you're walking through the grocery store, you're going bread, milk, eggs, bread, milk, eggs, we might come out with bread, milk, and eggs. But we start adding 7, 10, 12, 15 items to that list. Something cannot stay in there. We're going to drop things off in that list. We're not going to be able to remember it. We're doing the same thing in genealogy. What do you know about your target ancestor? You probably know their birth, where they were from, maybe who their family was, their marriage, who their kids were, where they died, when they died, what their probate said, where they lived, what their occupation was. How many items is that? That's just your target ancestor. But you've studied more than them. You've studied their spouse and their kids and their siblings, if you know them, and probably cousins. And that's a lot of pieces of information. We can't keep all of that on the screen all at one time to study it, and we surely can't keep it in our brain all at one time to study it. It's just not possible. We can't do it. So if you print it out, you can lay that out. You can write on things. You can organize it the way that it makes sense in your brain, and then you can see everything all at one time. You do much better analysis on paper than you do on an electronic screen. If you read a big, thick book, how do you want to read that? On a computer screen or holding the book, right? Yeah, everybody agrees. We want to hold that paper book because we think better on paper than we do on electronic devices. So printing records can really, really help with a genealogy tough problem. Who likes timelines? We all love timelines, right? Everybody's hands like, me, 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 me. I love timelines. We all love them. And there's a reason. They really help us focus on a specific period of time. It helps us understand what's going on. One of the reasons we like timelines is because we can see everything for that ancestor all at one glance, which is what we were just talking about with printing out documents. What you want to do with a timeline, though, is look for the pattern. So you're seeing a hit on your ancestor every 3 years, every 5 years, and then we have a big gap. Why is that gap there? What's going on with your ancestor in that time that created that gap? And try to start to fill in those gaps. That's the beauty of a timeline. Now, I like Excel and I like Word for timelines, but I'll tell you my favorite way to create a timeline is with sticky notes on my wall. Because I can leave this. This is what the wall beside my computer looks like at any given point in time. It's got sticky notes on it. But I can leave this timeline up, and as I'm working, I can glance at it and I can see it. It stays up. I don't have to pull it up or pull out a sheet of paper or anything like that. And also, if I'm writing it on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, then I have to mark through or erase and rewrite. If I'm doing it on Excel or Word, I still also feel a little bit confused about editing that or maybe deleting something off or replacing some text in that. Plus, again, it's hard to see, and we're right back to the whole, paper is better than. But here's what I love about doing it this way. If I want to add something in, I just stick another sticky note. If I need to take something off, I just pull it off. It's super easy to edit. So I love sticky notes for this reason, for timelines in particular. Use your friends as a resource. I have a couple of genealogy groups that I'm a member of that, they're not really official. They're just like genealogy friends that get together every couple of weeks online. And we talk about genealogy. Our families are grateful, right? Because then we're not talking to them about genealogy. We're talking to these people. But reach out to people who you know are in genealogy and who are good at genealogy and say, hey, would you look over this for me? Or I'm working on a problem in this time frame in this area. What else can I look at? And have them critique your work. We don't know everything, right? No, there's no way. Genealogy is so vast. There's so many specialties in genealogy. We can't possibly know all of it. And so I'm amazed every time I bring a genealogy problem to my group of friends that, who get together every couple of weeks, they know so much more than I do. And they give me so many ideas. It's amazing. So make sure we're using our friends as resources for tough problems. Use what is not there to your advantage. Now, this is one I see genealogists don't use very often because it's a little bit backward way of thinking about things, but I want to try to encourage you to start to think like this if you don't do this. Absence can answer a question or help you answer a question. It is a type of circumstantial evidence, so you will have to put whatever this absence is with some other stuff. It'll be pieces of a puzzle, but you can put all those together to come up with an answer. At least it will help you narrow down possibilities, and you can also use it as a tool to develop more possibilities, more theories, more hypotheses, more options to look other places. Here's how it works in real life. I lose my car keys a lot, and my glasses and my cell phone but we're just going to stick with the car keys for the example, okay? So I have a hook on the wall in my garage where my car keys actually belong. But I have made a deal with myself. If I can't let go of something long enough to put them there on the way in, I can keep them in my hand until I get to the table at my front door or until I get to the kitchen counter. Those are the three places. Otherwise, they may be gone for months, right? So if I go somewhere and I look on the wall in the garage and my keys are not there, the absence of my keys there pushes me to believe that they will be on the front table or on the kitchen counter. If I then go to the front table and they're not there, the absence of my keys on the hook in the garage and the front table pushes me to believe that they will be on the kitchen counter. The same thing works in genealogy. So, for example, Mary was 8 years old in 1900 in her parents' census record. She should still be there, or I expect her to be there on their 1910 census record, but she's not there. She is absent. What does her absence mean? In this situation, it can push me to come up with some other options that will go on a research to-do list, a written plan, right, to check out for her. Could be that she died. Maybe that's why she's not there. Maybe she got married and she's in her husband's home. Maybe she was in another house. Maybe she went to go live with a cousin, or she took on work as a domestic servant somewhere. And so she's in another home. Maybe she was away at school. So all these options, maybe she just wasn't recorded. That happens, unfortunately. So all of these options are there now for me. Her absence pushes me to believe that there is something else possible. A lot of times we see people, or a lot of times people will come talk to me and they'll say, I found somebody, but I'm not sure that's the right person. I've been working on this problem for a really long time, but I'm not sure I've come up with the right answer yet. They've got an answer, but they just don't know if it's the right one or not, okay? So finding no other candidates, the absence of any other candidates can push you to believe that you have in fact found the correct people. A lot of times, if people would do this in their genealogy research, they've already got the answer. They just don't quite realize it because they haven't gone the extra step to see, are there any other candidates out there to be my person? And if you go that extra step and you still don't find them, then it pushes you to believe that you have found the right person. So an example that I just did a few months ago, I had children and I was looking for their parents. I had Craig children. So I knew the daddy's name had to be Craig, or that was my assumption, right? It's an assumption. And they were living with some McKenzie family. And so my assumption was the mother might be named Mackenzie. This was the theory that I was working on. You got to choose a theory, right, to work on it and prove it out. So that was the theory that I chose to work on at the time. And so what I did is I found a Craig McKenzie marriage in the county. But I had that lingering moment of, but how do I know? How do I know that's the right people? What if it's not? And so what I did is I did a really wide search for that county and all the surrounding counties. And at the end of the day, I was able to say, this is the only couple where the father is Mackenzie. I mean, the father is Craig and the mother is Mackenzie. Not only that, it is the only Craig McKenzie marriage for the county and the surrounding counties for a 35-year period of time. If I then tell you, I think these are the parents, and I had other evidence too, but doesn't that bolster my evidence to say, yeah, that's probably their marriage record, you know? So the absence of something can bolster the evidence that you do have already and confirm for you that you do in fact have the right person. If you put into your research notes, this is the only James Smith in this Tri-County area for a 25-year period of time, that is significant, isn't it? Absolutely. So if you're not adding this into your research, this type of thing, the absence of things, start doing that, and it will really, really build up your proof and support your proof as you move through the research problem. All right, so some things that you can do when you're searching, go back and search again. Things are coming online that haven't been online. Go check those again. Research through things, I would say every few months, just to see if something else hits that wasn't online before. That broke down one of the biggest brick walls I've ever had. Was all of a sudden all these newspaper articles came online that had not been before. And so I, very pleased about that. Go back and do that. I'll do a first name search for a census record. And people laugh when I say that, but listen to me for a second, okay? This is a tough genealogy problem, right? Your person's name is Mary or John. It's horribly common. I will go into the census and I will limit it to that county or the Tri-County area or whatever right there. And I will put in Mary, no last name, and hit search and just see what happens. Their last name may have been so horribly misunderstood or spelled by the enumerator that you're not finding them that way in the indexes. But if it's a pretty easy first name, you may find them that way. Yeah, I'm going to get a lot of Marys pop up, but that's okay because it's a tough genealogy problem. What else have I got to do right now, right? That I'm stuck or I wouldn't be doing this. So go through that list of Marys or Johns and see if something happens for you that way. A unique ID search. What is something that is unique about your ancestor that would pop them out from the rest of the population? Maybe you could do a search for, and the family profile is a great example. Maybe you could do a search for the daddy's name, the mama's name, and the kids' names with no last name and see what happens. Maybe you can, if your ancestor had a unique occupation or skill set, like say blacksmith, go look for all the blacksmiths in that area at that time frame with no name at all. Ancestry has that keyword search. Go put that down there and see what happens. You're going to get a big list. But again, what else have you got to do? Just read through and see if somebody could be your person out of the list that it generates. Read the census record line by line. Sometimes that can be tedious, but this is especially helpful if your people were not home and the neighbors gave the enumerator the information because maybe they don't quite know or they got something messed up. But if you read the census line by line for that county and that time frame and oh, wait a minute, that family right there, let me look at that a little more closely, because that could be your family and it's just their information is messed up. Use other sites' indexes. If you search on Family Search, jump over and look at Ancestry and vice versa, and MyHeritage and the other sites. They all have different software. Their algorithms work differently. They were all indexed by different people. And so maybe this person got it right on the index when they typed in that last name, and maybe this person didn't. So check all of them to see. And then again, try to use those overlooked clues, things that would help you. If you know your neighborhood from 1850, go pull up that same neighborhood in 1860 and just read through it. And then in 1870, maybe your whole family got missed in 1860. That's happened, right? I have swatches where it looks like maybe the whole road, because I've done the neighborhood profile, and it looks like maybe that whole road got missed in the 1860 census. But that at least, okay, fine, I know now they were missed. I can quit, I can quit looking for them, right? And give myself a little peace. Write it out. I'm telling you, this is going to help you more than you can ever imagine. I write it out in narrative form. If I can explain to you my research in narrative form, if I can type it out in a narrative, it has to make sense. And I have to get it right, because I'm also including in there my sources. So I'll type out, according to the 1860 census, this is where they lived. And according to the death certificate, these were her parents' names. Or you can type it in there and then use the footnote function in Word or WordPerfect to list your sources at the bottom. Writing it out will show you, it will humble you as a researcher, because it will show you where you have holes in your research. It will show you where you have conflicts and errors. Even now, as careful as I try to be, there will be something that I have in my family research, my software, my family tree software, that somehow got put in there and there's no source for it. It just happens. We took it from somewhere else, or we put it in there and we thought, I'll source that in a minute, or we put it in there and hoped that a shaky leaf hint would come by and verify it for us, or something like that. And I will be typing it up and say, okay, what's my source for this? And realize that I don't have a source for it. Well, okay, let me go research that out. Am I mixing up two different people's information here? Have I conflated two people that if I separate them out, it's going to break down my brick wall? What's going on here? You will have to have good research done to be able to type it out and have it make sense and hold up to scrutiny from yourself. And it will show you your errors, and it'll show you where you need to go back and shore up your research. Sometimes you just got to start over. And I'm so glad y'all don't have tomatoes in here, because I feel like this is where you would throw them at me. And I really do mean start over to a degree. Remember, we talked about printing out the records that you have and the notes that you have and all of that. Print those out, get you a big paper file, plus all of your written paper documents, and sit down and spread them out and go back through them. And you're going to resort everything and re-examine everything. When you do that, you're going to minutely scour every sheet in there. What I do is I take the record and I take a blank sheet of paper and I put it at the very top, and I pull down and I read across whatever that first line is. And I make myself take the time to go word by word. And then the second line, third line, fourth line. I am scouring these records, absolutely scouring them for anything that's going to give me a clue or a hint. And you will a lot of times find the answer to your question directly. You just didn't realize you had it. Two examples I can think of off the top of my head. The lady who has been my mentor called me one day. She said, "You're never going to believe what I did. You know that problem I've been working on?" She was trying to prove when this man's wife died. She said, "You know that problem I'm working on?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "I solved it." I said, "Oh, great. How'd you do it? Where'd you look?" She said, "No, you can't ever tell anybody this." And I said, "Okay, okay." She said, I was carrying my paper file folder into the den and I dropped it and paper went everywhere, all over. She said it skittered all across the floor. She said, I got everything picked up and I just decided I had better sit down at the dining room table and go through everything. I had to put it back in order. She said, and that made me read through every sheet of paper I have. And she said, I've got the man's probate record. And I said, right. She said, in there is a receipt for her coffin. And I said, okay, well, there you go. So if you are stumped, go back through and read through every single thing, because I'm telling y'all, she is an excellent genealogist. She knows what she's doing, and there was that answer. But here's what happens. If whatever reason you were consulting that record to start with, that kind of gets stuck in your head. So she was looking at it for his probate information and sort of scanned through everything to start with. Well, later, when your research question changes, then when you go back through, that's all you can see is the first thing that you were looking for. Your brain helps you overlook stuff. So go back through and read through on paper, physically touch it, and see if you can find that information out. Happened to me the other day, a couple of weeks ago. I was trying to prove a parent-child relationship and had been working on it, and I found a deed. This is also why I advocate that we transcribe documents for ourselves instead of letting artificial intelligence transcribe it for us, that we actually do it for ourselves. And I also advocate that we do it with a pen and paper instead of typing, because you can start to type and not think about what you're typing. But when you do it by hand, you have to think about, well, I was busy and I didn't have time, and you know how all that is, right? And so I had read through this deed. I was working on parent-child relationship, and I read through a deed, and it was from who I thought the mother was to who I thought the son was, but it was just a deed. I mean, normal deed language, normal deed money, I just scanned through it. And so I incorporated it into my research notes, and I wrote up all this stuff, and I wrote up this big logical thing about them being connected through this deed and all that. And then I decided to transcribe the document completely backwards. Please learn from my mistake. So when I went back and I transcribed that deed by hand, it said, this is his inheritance. This is deeded to him as his inheritance. And I went, oh, well, gee, I just cost myself how much time, right? And that's right back to the lesson about using written research plans. We are going to save ourselves time if we do it the slow way to start with, right? If I had transcribed that document to start with, I wouldn't have missed that the first go round. So minutely scour everything you already have. That's going to help you a lot. Some little tiny things that you can look at that we probably don't think about a lot: cancellation stamps on letters. If you have letters or anything like that, go back and see what those cancellations were, the city and the time frame. Maybe that could also be a substitute for putting your ancestor in a time and place too, by the way, if you need to do that. Occupation clues. What was your ancestor's occupation? What skill set did they have to have? And then go research that occupation in that location at that time frame. Maybe there was a whole bunch of people with that occupation moving into the area at the time. Well, where did they come from? Can you follow them backwards and find out where your ancestor came from and get more information about them that way? Also, occupations passed down in families. So if you don't know who their birth family is, what is the occupation? Where did those people come from in the location and time place? Then go research where they came from. And both places, look for the same surname as your ancestor with the same occupation. You may tag into some family that way. Witnesses on documents, particularly where it's bonds and it's going to cost the person money, right? Because I'm not going to get some stranger to sign a bond with me if they think I might not do the right thing, right? So usually that's going to be somebody they knew. Who are the witnesses on marriage records, on wills, in the probate record, on deeds? Who are these witnesses? Go research those people and see if you can connect them to your target ancestor. Naming patterns are hugely important in genealogy, showing that name being passed down in families. Hopefully it's not John. Photographer names and locations. Y'all know sometimes the photographer is on those pictures or even on the back. Well, that photographer and your ancestor had to come into contact with each other at some point. Did your ancestor live where that photographer was? Was it a traveling photographer? I don't know. Go check it out and see. See if that might give you a clue about your ancestor as well. And research the location is hugely important. Find out what's going on in that city or that county in that time frame. What's going on? Why are these people there? Why are they coming in? Read local newspapers for those dates. That is the Facebook of the day, and it is going to tell you what is going on in your ancestors' lives and what the big issues were. And it may be that you go, oh yeah, that's right. That was going on. Okay. Collateral relative research. If your ancestor is the green guy on the bottom right and you cannot connect them to the family directly, you can't figure out who his birth parents are. Look at people next to him, around him. Look at his siblings, if you know those. Look at cousins or suspected cousins, because eventually those people's ancestors are also what? Your target person's ancestors. And then you can tie your target into a birth family. So step away from your target and go research other family around them. This is hugely helpful, and I solve a lot of problems for a lot of clients doing this type of work right here. Go look at the clusters of people in their life. Don't we talk about having a church family and a work family and all of those things? Neighbors function that way, particularly back in time. Our neighborhoods moved together. They migrated together. So go look at the neighbors and see if you can discover about your ancestor what it is that you wanted to know. Go figure out who they went to church with and go look at those church records and see what was going on with those church groups at the time. All kinds of possibilities in those clusters or those groups. Very quickly, I'm going to show you what I see as the most overlooked or the most common mistakes in genealogy research. Details are overlooked in those sources. We read over things. I told you I did it myself just a few weeks ago on that deed. My mentor, who I think highly, highly of, did it herself. We all do it. We all overlook sources. The fix for that is to tell you to transcribe things, particularly by hand, or scour them, dissect them in some way to find every word in that document and see what it means to help you out. Using only free genealogy. Y'all, if the answer to your brick wall problem was out there for free, it would be more obvious than what it is. So if you're only using, or if you'll only consider free resources, you may be robbing yourself of a record that could solve your genealogy problem. No, if you're not doing that collateral relative technique or the cluster research technique, go do that. Big breakthroughs that way. Lots and lots of breakthroughs. And then death certificates. This is so prevalent that now before I will take a case on, I ask that person, have you gotten the death certificate for these people? And if the answer is no, I haven't gotten it, then I'll tell them, okay, well, you know, you can pay me to go get it, or you could order these yourself a lot cheaper, and I'll even refer you to how to do it if you want to do that, because that is how often people are overlooking death certificates. I'm not sure if they think that they're not entitled to them sometimes, or they don't know how to find them, or they're a little bit intimidated. If that is you, please reach out to, call me, I'll help you figure it out. But reach out to your genealogy society. Somebody can help you figure this out. But lots and lots and lots of times the death certificates will solve the problem. And it may not be your target's death certificate. It may be their siblings or even their children's death certificates. If you're looking for her birth family, and what does it say on her death certificate for the mama and daddy? It says, don't know, don't know, don't know, don't know where they came from, don't know the last name, don't know whatever, right? Go get her children's. A lot of times they'll say what her maiden name was on their death certificates. Go look for her siblings, look for her cousins. Because if you pull my second cousin's death certificate, eventually we're going to connect back up the line. Eventually. And then you can work your way back down till you get to me, right? So go look for other people's information, other people's death certificates besides yours, because you're no longer looking for the answer, right? If the answer was out there, you would have found it by now. You're not looking for the answer. You are looking for any kind of a hint or a clue or a lead that you can follow to get you to the answer, right? And above all, have fun. It may be the information you want doesn't exist anymore, but that's okay. Keep researching. I will tell you that the education that I get from working on tough genealogy problems surpasses any paid education that I have ever paid for. Ever. Because you're getting real life experience and you're having to learn those lessons the hard way. And at the end of the day, it is still fun. I'm happy to take questions, but I want to tell you that if you don't ask a question here or you think of it later, y'all please email me and I'll be happy to answer any questions for you or refer you anywhere that I can refer you to. I love talking about genealogy, and if you will do this, that man back there in the back, Ed Monk, who is my beau, who very kindly came to support me today, would greatly appreciate it, because he thinks that if I talk to y'all about genealogy, then I won't talk to him about it. So y'all, thank y'all so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. So I would ask those of you here in the auditorium, if you have a question, let us know so you can get a microphone. Let's start online. I've got more people online. Feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask the question directly. Or Paul, if you've got some queued up.
I don't have any queued up, but it's a great presentation. And I think it's going to help us all kind of get back in track to find those individuals that have been missing for so long.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Here. Hold on, please. Hold on. Hold on, please. Ma'am.
Hold on.
Ma'am. Ma'am.
Comment about death certificates. Check them out. My father's death certificate shows his sister is as his mother.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
ask. I didn't
Yeah.
know.
It happens. It happens that they're incorrectly listed
So
that way.
You do have to.
You do. It's
You
not.
do have to check even that.
Yeah, we always say we want to have at least 2 sources that agree in genealogy. And that's the reason, because we would love to have, we would love to find one document and it be true, but there are mistakes that are made, there are errors. So we would like to have 2 sources if possible.
I heard in the introduction that you wrote a Mississippi research guide.
Again,
What part of Mississippi are you from?
I'm from Central Mississippi,
Okay.
Brandon originally, and I currently reside in Oxford, Mississippi up north.
Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to say that the library in Jackson is absolutely wonderful.
It is. It's wonderful. We have a great state archive.
Even offline, it is still, I mean, I only had a short time to be there in person. My husband dropped me off and said, "All right, you have an hour." Anyway, but they helped me with offline research. I still use it today, but I'm going to see if your book is here in the library.
Okay, that was in the it's in the Family Tree magazine. If you will email me, I'll email you a copy of it. Yes.
How about online? Have we generated any questions online yet?
Nothing on this end. Looks good. Everybody's giving her a
Great.
thumbs up. Thank you.
Yeah, you were talking about the death certificates when you're having issues. I mean, I found some things and they were all conflicting. And I don't know, I mean, my mother's whole father's side, I knew nothing. And I've already had 2 big just hits, found graves. I mean, I think I finally found some living relatives, but conflicting things. So is like she said, there can be mistakes.
There can be.
I mean, is that still probably the most reliable thing that, like you said, you get siblings that you don't know about or the parent?
Yeah, so with any record, it does not matter what kind of record it is. You want another piece of information to verify what you're saying, or if we're really lucky, a couple of other 3 or 4. I know in the South, it's really hard. I feel like up north, they just walk in and they go, hey, I'd like to have a copy of my genealogy. And they go, yeah, here's back to your 9 times great grandmother with all the documentation, right? But down here, I feel like we have to work for it a little bit more. You know, we're just spread out. We're newer down here. We don't have that backlog of history and the records that were destroyed and stuff like that. But you always want to have at least 2 or 3 things that agree. So you've got to get rid of that conflict and really focus on that conflict and figure out why that error is there. Why is that there? Like with the sister being on there, well, that makes sense. They heard the sister's name and they said, oh, well, I think this is the mom, but it really wasn't. You know, you can kind of see why that conflict is there and move past it. But if you're repeatedly having that, again, you just want to do more and more, get it all together, get it all laid out, and then start to see what agrees and that you're not getting 3 or 4 people's information mixed up as well.
Online, anything yet?
Yep, we do have a question from DJ. I asked him if he would like to unmute and ask his question. He hasn't unmuted yet, but I'll ask the question for you real quick. What if the brick wall involves a relative institutionalized after World War II through the VA?
Okay, so you need a specialist. And that's not me. No, really, you need someone who is versed in handling those types of records, in handling veterans, military records, or the VA records. And I will tell you that on the Association of Professional Genealogists website, you can search for a genealogist by specialty. And I would go in there and start to narrow that down in that way. And try to find somebody that does know exactly how to find that type of a record and do that type of research. Because if they stayed institutionalized, then that sort of caps out where you're gonna, until we start having maybe like an obituary in there, possibly some probate records. And I know a lot of people say, oh, but they were institutionalized. That doesn't mean they can't have a probate record, even though they were institutionalized. So, you know, people were institutionalized who still had property or money, things they inherited that had to be handled in some way. So
Well,
again,
you.
want to
I'm
do that
Dee.
typical research, but also probably find somebody who knows what they're talking about.
Thanks. I'm DJ. I'm a female, but yeah, that it's a little bit complicated. So I'll take your advice since it's my grandfather. So thank you so much.
Okay, awesome. And too, you can email me if you want to, and I'll try to, I can try to help you find some more information as well.
Hi, my name's Nancy. Can you hear me okay?
I got you, Nancy.
Okay, great. Thank you. Again, great presentation. I've really enjoyed it. I have a question though, and you may know, related to Alabama records. I have a 3rd great grandmother who was born around 1825. I have her marriage certificate, but I have doubts based on other family members about the name, her maiden name on that document. And it's as typical, it was in the mid 1840s that she married my great grandfather. And he, anyway, they show her as Hannon, but I don't show any Hannons. And the family information that I have says it was Harmon, but I have that one record. And then I have their recording on the 1850 census there in Alabama. And of course, she has her married name there. She only had 2 offspring. One appears to have died. So my question for you is there a state archive, or do I just need to go back to those counties in Alabama? I've relied largely on Family Search and a full ancestry and newspapers. And I have a real brick wall with her. I'm right now in the process of meeting a descendant to have them participate in an mtDNA test. So, but are there archival records in a collection there in Alabama? Do you know? Or do I just
They
need to
do.
kind of go after that myself?
Alabama does have a wonderful archive and they will help you out. I have found both the Mississippi and the Alabama archives to be very helpful. So you can reach out to the Alabama archives, but I'll tell you, the Alabama Genealogical Society is
Uh-huh.
phenomenal. And so I'm a member of that society, and as a benefit of your membership, they will help you do research,
Oh,
and they know those records inside and out. They have, what you can do is submit tell them that you want to take advantage of that part of your membership, and they will match you to the person that you need to be matched with. They have helped me as well. So I have been super impressed with how good they are. So that is a benefit of membership to that particular society.
okay, that's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I like that you had overlooked sources, photographs being one of them. I haven't started the research yet for late 1800s, early 1900 photos that have the photographer and the town or city listed on them. What are some of the first places you might look if you were researching a photographer?
So I just do a good old fashioned internet search. Whoever your internet browser is that you use, that's where I start. I'll just put that photographer in the city in there and try to research that photographer out and go from there. And then I also look at the catalogs and who has what for local libraries and the archives, because a lot of times those photographers' collections were donated someplace, or they know something about those photographers. Somebody has written up something about them, or they know something about them. But the very first thing I do is just a good old-fashioned elementary internet search for that photographer in that location.
Any more online questions?
No, a lot of thank yous. Great presentation.
Thank y'all.
I just have one more. Any fun stories you might like to share about researching for TV programs?
Oh, so the way that they do that is you don't know who you're researching. They don't reveal that to you. I've only had them tell me who it was on the front end one time, and I don't ask either. They don't want you to know ahead of time. They task you with what research they want done, and they do explain to you kind of what they're trying to look at or what they're trying to prove or why they need this information. But they don't tell you who your person is. Now, if you start to hit some stuff, you can kind of figure it out, right? And so, genealogists do the best background searches, right? So you can kind of figure it out. But I have had one time where I knew who it was before I started working on it. But you by and large don't know who it is, but they tell you, please go. They have excellent people who work on those, who are directing that research. And then you're further down the line and you are boots on the ground helping them find the local records and the things that are not available online. So it's really fun. I like doing offline research. I like going to the courthouse and doing research like that. So to me, that's a lot of fun. And finding those things, because I get excited. I'm like, nobody has seen this yet. I get to take a picture of it and send it in. Nobody else knows this exists yet. So I love doing that kind of stuff, but that's how it works. They don't typically disclose to you on the front end who you're researching.
Last chance for questions. Well, then I'd just like to give a great shout out to Ed for having a conference here so that we had the opportunity to have you here in person and not just having you by Zoom. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. It was really great tips and techniques, and I know it's going to benefit all of us. So thank you very much. Thank you all of you out there in Zoom land for joining us, and we will see you in November. Everybody have a great day. This has been a production of the Dallas Genealogical Society. If you're already a member, thank you. Your fees have been supporting these and other society activities. If you're not yet a member, please consider joining now. Go to dallasgenealogy.org and click on the membership tab.